Ooh, that went a long way. I bet you like to hit the ball a long way. Well, I do too. Let me show you the elements in my swing that I use to hit a ball a great distance. For me, and I think for most people, a correct grip creates power. Why does a correct grip create power? Well, it allows you to get a total release of the golf club at the golf ball. I try to take as wide an arc as I possibly can going back, and wide an arc as I possibly can coming through. This gives me a very, very flat approach into the ball, and I hit it as much in the back of the ball as possible. 3, at the top of the swing, I am completely coiled. My legs are in a position to where they can really start to drive. My shoulders and upper body are turned. The club is in a full horizontal position. Now, from this point, I drive with my legs, release the golf club, uncoil my body, and release completely at the golf ball. All these elements help do the one thing that is necessary to create power, and that's make sure that this, the club head, moves fast. What happens to the average golfer when he wants to hit it 10 yards further? Well, the first thing he does is he gets all charged up, he gets all ready to really nail it, and he walks up to the ball. First thing he does, he gets the club in a death grip. Then as he's standing up over the ball, his arms lock up. Then his shoulders and upper body, and then his legs. And now he's really ready to hit it. And what does he do? He swings as fast as he can and hits it 40 yards offline. Well, obviously, that's not what you want to do. To hit a ball further, you must use all the elements in your golf swing to their fullest degree. What I mean is that you want to make sure that you take as long and full a swing and allow yourself to complete your backswing, allow your legs to work, and allow to get yourself time to get a complete release at the golf ball. And how do I go about doing that? Well, when I get ready to hit a golf shot, and I want to hit it a little bit further, I make a very conscious effort to be more relaxed and swing more slowly at the start of the swing and try to maintain that pace throughout the swing. After all, this, the club head, is what we want to move faster, not everything else. All the other things do is help that to move faster. So this is what I try to do. I walk up, I get nice and relaxed, make sure that everything is good and relaxed, and take as long and full a swing as I possibly can, but with a conscious effort to remain slower. And that was a long hit. The most frequently hit shot in golf is the slicer fade. It may surprise you to know, for the greatest part of my professional career, my favorite shot was the fade. Why did I hit a fade most of my career? Well, first of all, the straight shot is not only the hardest shot to hit in the game of golf, but the only time it'll go at the target is when you hit it. Otherwise, it's going to be moving away from the target with a hook or a slice. So let's understand that to play a fade, and you aim the ball to the left of the target, you're going to be moving the ball to the target, just likewise with a hook, you move the ball to the target. Now, to hit a fade, all that I do is instead of having the club face square at address, I open the club face slightly at address, and then I aim slightly to the left of the target. This will move the ball down the left side of the fairway and back in. I can do it the same with a driver. I aim down the left side of the fairway and move it in, or hitting into a green to the left side of the green, moving into the hole. And here we are. Down to the left, slightly open club face, and make a normal swing. Should produce a nice little left-to-right fade. Now, how much do you open the club face? Well, that's a matter of personal preference, and the only way you can find out is for you to get on the practice tee and experiment a little bit for yourself. The average golfer tries to aim the ball down the center of the fairway. At that point, knowing he is a slicer, he tries to swing out over the ball and tries to guide the ball into the fairway, thus losing power and direction, like this. He'll hit a big old slice, or he'll pull the ball, or he'll do anything, but he won't hit it very far and he won't hit it very straight. Now, really, I don't mind a fella being slightly outside. If he's going to play a little slice, that doesn't bother me too much. But let's aim down the left side of the fairway, like this, and the fella feels like he has to swing a little bit to the inside to control the golf ball. So let's just open the club face slightly, aim down the left side of the fairway, try to swing from the inside so we'll retain our power and our slightly left to right shot for direction. He's going to have more power. He's going to have better direction. Now let's remember, to retain your power, you want to use the same swing for all golf shots, including the fade. Let's just aim the ball to the left and have a slightly open club face to give you the tendency to fade the ball. How much you fade it is a matter of experiment, which only you will learn by practice. If you want a little more distance and still control the golf ball, you should learn how to play a draw. To hit a draw, I think you should first understand what produces a draw. A draw is produced not by coming in to the ball with a square club face, but by coming into the ball with a closed club face, or the club face turned in at impact. Now, I don't want to change my golf swing to play a draw. What I want to do is make exactly the same golf swing that I've made with every other golf shot, but by the turning of the club face in, I will take loft off the club and produce a little extra distance, produce a spin that will make the ball go to the left, and to compensate for that, I aim slightly to the right of the target. And depending on how much I want to draw the ball is how much I aim to the right of the target and how far I turn the club face in. Well, what should that do? Well, as you look down the line of the target, that should make the ball go left. So let's aim to the right of the target to compensate for the closed club face. Now, all I want to do from there is make a complete golf swing. And this is what should happen. Not bad. How does the average golfer go about hitting a draw? Well, he's been taught to, first of all, move his left hand over here. Move his right hand under here, okay? Now, he's going to close his stance. He's going to bring his right foot back. Well, now he's got to take the club to the inside, so he pulls it back in here, and then he's got to make sure as he goes through the ball, he's got to roll his wrists over to close the club face, and it looks something like this. Oh, boy, wasn't that a nice, pretty little draw? Let me see you do it again. Well, obviously he can't, because he has too many inconsistencies, and he hasn't used his basic golf swing and the one that he's used to. To play a draw properly, when you're on the practice range, let's say you decide to close your club face a little bit, and you aim a little bit to the right of the target, and it produces a 5-yard draw. Fine. We'll close a little bit more and see if it produces a 10-yard draw. Now, you'll notice that when you close the club face and aim to the right of the target, you'll also get a little bit more distance out of the shot. So if you're playing a 5-iron distance, many times you can play that with a 6-iron because it produces more distance. Or if you have a 4-iron shot, you can take the 5-iron and get the extra distance that you need. And it should look something like this. Aim slightly to the right of the target, close the club face slightly, and make a normal swing. I hope a draw helps your golf game. Hitting the ball high, it's really not that difficult to do if you understand the principles, and it can really be a lot of fun. I think probably the most enjoyable and satisfying shot I can play in golf is when I'm behind a tree or an obstacle in trouble, and I'm able to get the ball up quickly and fly it to the green, particularly with a long iron. I have here a 1-iron in my hand, and let me show you how I go about hitting the ball up in the air. First of all, I'm going to use the same golf swing that I use with every other golf club. Let's just take that as a given. Secondly, I'm going to open the club face to put loft on the club. Well, you say, well, that's going to make the ball slice. It is if I place it off my left heel. If I move the ball up in my stance, then the club will come square later in the swing. Also, by moving it up my stance, I'll catch it a little bit more on the upswing, which will allow me to stay behind the ball and should throw the ball up in the air. Let me show you. Well, you might say that that'll also make the ball go shorter. Well, it does. So when you're hitting up over an obstacle, you probably need one more club to play that high shot. But also remember, when you're playing downwind is the other reason you're going to play a high shot, to stop the ball quickly on the green, so that the wind will compensate and give you the extra distance you need, and the high shot will stop the ball quickly. Most average golfers think to hit a high shot that you must remain behind the ball and also help it into the air by a good full release. Well, they're absolutely right, but the way they do it is that they leave the ball at the same place in their stance. They get behind the ball by going back to the right foot and then staying there and releasing from the top of the swing, which is casting. Something like this. Of course, they always finish the swing. Well, obviously, what's happened there is that the average golfer has lost power because he stayed behind the ball too long. He stayed on his right foot. He's casted his swing because he didn't move to his left side. What he should have done was move the ball up in a stance, opened his club face slightly. This keeps him behind the ball by moving the ball up. It also puts the loft on the club to get it up in the air. He was right, he must release it. But he moves to the left side so he gets his power too. Something like this. You can do that too. Just give it a little bit of a try. When playing in the wind, it really makes the game a lot more fun if you understand why and how to play low shots. The obvious reason that people like to hit low shots in the wind is that they want to keep the ball down out of the wind so they can keep control of it. Well, there are two kinds of wind shots. First, and the one that's probably most commonly played, is the one where a fellow moves the ball back in a stance and closes the club face. Now, what does that do? Well, number one, by moving the ball back in the stance, it means we're going to get a little bit more on the downswing. Number two, We've closed the club face that takes loft off the golf club, which means we should hit it further into the wind. And 3, it's a good position to be in because we come square a little earlier in the swing. Should produce a shot that looks something like this. Now the second method of hitting a ball low comes from taking exactly the same swing that you'd normally take with any other shot. All you do is reduce the length of the golf club and take a longer club, meaning if you have an 8-iron shot, maybe take a 6-iron and go down the shaft 4 or 5 inches and do exactly the same thing you would with any other golf shot. What does this do? Well, having less loft will keep it lower, the shorter shaft will make it go shorter, and you're not really hitting the ball quite as hard because you don't have as long a shaft, and you're going to produce less spin, which will throw the ball or keep the ball lower in the air. So here we are. Right here, normal swing. Both are very useful. The average golfer, not enough club in his hand and hits it too hard in the wind. What does it do? The ball goes out low, shoots up in the air, ends up 20 yards short of the target. Well, what he really wanted to do was use a combination of the two things I just talked about, the two lessons. 1, you move the ball back in your stance, close the club face. 2, go down on the shaft. If you have a long iron shot, let's say a 1 or a 2 iron, and you move the ball back in your stance, you're not going to put a lot of spin on the ball, so you don't have to worry about shooting up in the air. And by closing the club face, you're going to put a slight draw on it, which will also help keep the ball down. As the shot gets shorter, the club lengths should vary. In other words, if I've got a 5-iron shot, I should be using a 3 or 4 iron going down the shaft. As I go to an 8 iron, I need a 6 iron and go down the shaft. As I get up to the 9 or the wedge, I take even a 7 or an 8 and go way down the shaft to take the spin off the golf ball and to be able to control it. I've got a 6 iron here. I'm going to play an 8 iron distance shot. And when you do that, you'll have a lot more fun playing in the wind because you're going to control the golf ball. You know, golf isn't always played from tees and level lies. Sometimes we get an uphill lie, and that can be a lot of trouble. Let me show you how I play it. An uphill lie can be a very awkward shot. So to try and play the shot, I try to make sure that I do as many things with my body, the club, and my swing that will simulate being on a level lie. First of all, being on an uphill lie will put more loft on the golf club. So if I've got a 7-iron shot, why not play it with a 5-iron and just make it 7-iron length? Now all of a sudden I've got the right length and the right loft for the distance I want to go. Secondly, I really try to use the same golf swing, and I want to place the ball pretty much the same place in the stance. But I'm going to try to shift my weight so that I can make the things happen at the right time. Meaning, if I move my hips a little bit forward, that sets the weight a little bit more towards my left foot and making it easier for me to get off my right foot. I'm going to keep the weight and my hips up there a little bit. To help that, I'm also going to take the angle of my body and try to get it perpendicular to the slope. So that sets myself here with my hips up here, which should allow me to come fairly level into the ball. Okay, let's see what happens. Worked all right there. The average golfer tries to play an uphill shot in one of two ways. Usually, he will try to make sure that he gets the ball first. He tries to get his weight up on his left foot. So he moves way up here on his left side, and he hits And what does he do is he just drives the club into the ground, and the ball never really gets up or goes anywhere. The second method that the average golfer tries, he says, well, I want to make sure I get the ball up off the hill, so he gets his weight way back on his right foot so he stays well behind the ball, and then he stays right there, and he hits it from there, and what does he do? He hits it straight up in the air and doesn't get any power. Well, obviously, the combination of the two is what we're trying to get to. He wants to get his weight forward so he can get his weight to his left side. We do that by shifting our weight to our left side here. We're going to get behind the ball so we swing level the hill by changing our body angle. So let's do that again. Hips forward, body angle back, swing the length of the hill with a club that will simulate the distance you're trying to go. Instead of a 7-iron, let's use a 5-iron and choke it down to a 7-iron length. We then are free to play the shot. I hope that helps you play a few uphill shots the next time you're on the course. For most people, the downhill lie is the most difficult and awkward shot that they play in the game of golf. Let me show you how I play it. The downhill shot is a difficult and awkward shot for a variety of reasons. The main reason being is that you're going to have a shot where you're going to be reducing the loft off of the golf club, meaning you're going to have to take a shorter club to play the shot, and you don't have the luxury of being able to lengthen the golf club. So what do? Well, you try to create as many things as possible to be able to compensate for that factor and still get the ball into the air. First of all, I'm going to try to make my body angle fit the hillside. I'm going to try to move my hips back and most of my weight back to my right foot at the address. What does this do? Well, by putting my body angle perpendicular to the hill, I'll then be able to swing as normal as possible and on the line of the hill. My hips being back will keep me from getting my weight too fast to my left side and not allowing for a full release. The other compensation is that I'm going to put slightly more loft on the golf club by opening the golf club face and then aiming to the left of the target to compensate for that fade. Should look something like this. I know this is a complicated lesson, but the problem in playing a downhill shot is to get the ball in the air. The average golfer will try two ways of getting the ball in the air. One, he tries to get behind it. And what happens? Well, he hits about 8 inches behind it. The second thing he tries to do, he says, I don't want to hit behind it. I want to make sure I get the ball first. So he leans all his weight down on his left foot, and then he hits it. Yeah, he might catch the ball solidly, but he drives it right on into the ground. Doesn't get any elevation, he can't get a result out of the shot. So let me review a little bit of the things we're going to try to do to get the ball in the air, and that's the important thing on a downhill shot. One, we're going to open the club face slightly. That puts more loft on the club. We're going to take more club than you might normally want to compensate for the downhill lie. We're going to open our stance slightly to allow us to play a slight fade because of the open club face. We're going to get our body angle perpendicular to the hill, and we're going to get the majority of our weight centered back so we don't get to the left foot too fast. So let's watch that again. Here we are, left, open club face, body angle, and a normal swing. I hope that helps you the next time you get in this awkward position. The side hill lie with the ball above your feet. A lot of people have trouble with it simply because they don't understand it. Let me explain it to you. When the ball is above the feet in a golf shot, the angle of the plane must change to conform with the side of the hill. What I mean by that is, if your normal plane would be here for a level lie, that would put the toe of the club into the side of the hill. So you really must conform the sole of the club to the side of the hill and swing on that plane. To do that, you need a slightly more erect body angle. You need to try and keep your head as still as possible. To do that, the natural tendency is to fall back down the hill because you're on the side of it, is to keep more weight on your toes. And also, the club, as it swings, will produce a natural hook because the club face will be coming in at a different angle and will naturally throw the ball off of the flat side hill lie to the left. So we aim to the right of the target to compensate. Everything else is the same. Ball to the right of the target, slightly more erect, weight slightly on my toes, and a normal swing. Hopefully we'll get the right results. When the average golfer is confronted with a side hill lie, the ball above his feet, he'll generally make one of two mistakes. The first common mistake is he'll try to play it as though he were on a level surface or a flat lie. And what happens, he'll get the toe of the club caught into the hillside, something like that, and the ball might go anywhere. Now, the second fella, he understands that he might get the toe of the club caught in the hillside, so he stands a little bit more erect to compensate for that. But as he stands more erect, he forgets a little bit about his balance, and all of a sudden, he's standing there and hitting it like this. He falls right back down the hillside. Well, obviously, a combination of those two is what you're looking for. You're looking to keep your weight into the hillside. You're looking to keep a slightly more erect posture to be able to fit the plane of the swing to the side of the hill. And remember that because you're on the side of the hill, the ball will probably hook, so you need to aim slightly to the right of the target to allow for the hook. Then you just go ahead and make a normal golf swing. Try it my way. The side hill lie with the ball below your feet is one of the most difficult shots in the game of golf. Let me show you why and what to do about it. First of all, if I were playing a shot with the ball above my feet, I could take the club and allow the sole of the club to fit the contour of the hill by moving up the hill. But with the ball below my feet, as I move the club up the hill to let the sole fit the contour of the hill, all of a sudden there's a point where I can only go so far, and the heel then gets in the way. So what I try to do to compensate for this is I try to keep as much weight as I possibly can on my heels and my middle body back as far as I can. This allows me to keep from falling down the hill. It also allows me to keep my head steady, which is going to have a natural tendency to fall out over the hill. And it allows me to bend my upper body to help fit the contour of the hill a little easier. Now, as I bend over, I also find that if I look down at the club, the angle of the face of the club is going to want to come in at such an angle as to produce a slice. So I should aim to the left of the target and just allow it naturally to happen. This is where I get the extra help that I've needed, in that by moving around on the hill, I'll be able to come up the hill with my swing a little bit more, and this will allow me to avoid as much as possible catching the heel of the club in the ground. So here's what it looks like. Weight back on the heels, bend over at the body, aim to the left of the target, keeping my weight back on my heels, keeping my head steady, and then a normal golf swing. Weight back on the heels, bend over at the body, aim to the left of the target, and then a normal golf swing. Produces a little fade, and hopefully goes somewhere near the target. When the average golfer plays a side hill lie with a ball below his feet, he generally finds himself losing his balance and hitting the heel of the club into the ground, and the result is a bad shot. Something like this. What I try to do is to fight all the natural tendencies and maintain good balance. I do that by keeping the weight on my heels, bending over from the waist, and trying as hard as I can to keep my head still. I aim to the left of the target to allow for the natural tendency for the ball to slice, and then I try to swing normally. I hope that helps you with one of the most difficult shots in the game of golf. The 50 to 60 yard pitch shot, medium length shot. A shot we all frequently have to play, and I'm afraid we're not as good at it as we should be. Let me show you how I play it. First of all, I play the middle length pitch shot with a sand wedge. As a matter of fact, I play all pitch shots with a sand wedge, as do most of the pros on the tour. Secondly, I want to make sure that I'm as aggressive as I can possibly be with this shot to be able to get as much control on the golf ball, either through spin or through hitting a soft shot into the green. Now, how do I go about being aggressive? Well, I want to make sure that I'm hitting the ball as hard as I can at the bottom and not make it go a great distance, maybe just 50 or 60 yards. Well, if I would hold the club at the end, the ball is going to go a great distance. If I go down the club or down the shaft and reduce the length of the shaft of the club, thus reducing the length of the club, I should hit a shorter shot, even if I hit it with the same power. If I reduce my arm swing from there to here and play the shot with more hands, I'll again not hit the ball as far, but I'll still be able to hit it hard. So let's see how I go about playing the shot. I use a fairly narrow stance, keep my feet nice and loose, and being able to be very fluid so that I can be very quick on my feet to be aggressive. Next, I play the ball off my left heel. My head is pretty much over the top of the ball. I grip the club shorter. I make sure I play the shot with a lot of hands, and I'm trying to be very aggressive. Ooh, that was close. I think if you try to play the shot aggressively, you'll find that you'll get a lot more control and you'll enjoy playing this shot with much greater success. There are quite a few ways that the average golfer has trouble playing a middle-length wedge shot. But I think the most common is that he takes too full a swing and eases off into the shot. Something like that, resulting in the inability to spin the ball or the inability to control the ball through being aggressive. What should he do? Well, first of all, he wants to get club head speed to get spin. So he needs to use his hands. Secondly, he doesn't want the ball to go very far, so he needs to reduce the length of the club by going down the shaft. This combination, along with quick feet and your head right over the ball, should produce a nice little crisp middle length wedge shot for better control. Does this shot scare you? Well, it really shouldn't. It's the only shot in golf you really don't have to hit the golf ball first. The sand shot is obviously played with a sand club. And the sand club is so designed that it will go down into the sand and out without going too deep because of the flange that hangs down on the golf club. This is the part that controls the depth of the shot. And the depth of a sand shot is far more important than how far you hit behind the ball. I really don't worry too much whether I hit an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches behind it, but I always worry about how my hands are at impact. Now, let's take the address of the ball. Instead of having the ball off the left heel, I move the ball up into the instep of my left foot, which means it's maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches in front of my heel. But I still enter the sand approximately off my left heel. I have a grip that is similar with that of a pitch shot in that my left hand's over this way and my right hand is over this way. The club face is slightly open. I use a fairly wristy stroke, and I want to make sure that the handle of the club does not pass the middle of my body until after I've made contact with the sand and the ball. That's how I control how deep and how far behind the ball I hit. Something like this. So remember, you want the handle of the club not to pass the middle of your body so the club will perform as it is designed until after you've hit the sand and the golf ball. Give it a try. It might help your sand play. I think the real thing about a bunker shot for the average golfer is that he's terrified of the sand, and he really is afraid to go ahead and just play a nice normal shot and let the club head do the work. The first guy, he tries to help it out of the sand, and he either hits the ball right in the middle and nails it across the green, or he hits it fat and doesn't get out of the bunker. The second fella, he thinks, well, if I take out enough sand, surely the ball's going to come out too. So he stands here, and he's got a big old long swing and tries to drill the club through the sand. Well, really, to play a sand shot, it's a very delicate shot. You want to hit just a little bit behind the ball. You want to let the club head do the work, and the looser you hold the golf club, the better chance you have of letting the club head do the work. So you place the ball off the instep, nice loose grip, hit it about twice as hard as you would for a normal shot, and let the club head do the work. I think your sand play is about to improve. It's essential to know how to hit a short pitch shot around a green if you want to save strokes. One of the biggest misconceptions in the game of golf is that pitch shots are played with pitching wedges. Actually, 95% of the pros play 95% of the shots around the green with a sand wedge. Why do they do this? Well, let's take the design of the sand wedge. The sand wedge is designed so that the flange of the club hangs below the leading edge. So if you sit the club on the ground, you'll find that the only thing that hits the ground, if the club is sitting in the position it was designed, is the flange. The leading edge doesn't get into the ground. If the leading edge gets into the ground, then you'll dig on the shot, as you would if you would use a pitching wedge. Now, the second feature of a sand wedge is the flange and the width of it. You see a lot of flanges that are very, very wide. I prefer a narrow flange because it gives me a lot more versatility in playing off of soft ground and hard ground. So now we figure out, well, how do we use this sand wedge when we go to play a shot? Well, you want to use it as it is designed, meaning that here's the club sitting on the ground as you would find it sitting on the shelf. So I try to make contact with the golf ball as though it had never moved from this position, so that I take the handle of the club and I don't want it to pass the middle of my body until after I've made contact with the golf ball. Now, to make this happen, I use a grip totally different than what I would with a chip shot or with a regular shot. I take a stronger left hand and a weaker right hand, which allows me to be a little freer with the wrist and play with a little bit more hands. And I stand up the ball as I would with any other shot, ball off the left heel. My grip is in that handsy position, as I call it. And then I let the club head do the work, and returning, not let the handle of the club pass the middle of my body until after impact, like this. It should help you with a lot of your shots around the green, too. The average golfer either has a shot coming into the green too hot or too soft. He really doesn't have any consistency on it. He either tries to play the ball back in his stance and drill the ball into the ground, or he tries to play the ball up in his stance and tries to lift it up on the green. Well, obviously, he's not going to be very consistent. So what he really wants to do is try to catch the ball at the bottom of the swing, and that's by placing the ball off the left heel and use a great deal of hands and returning the club to its original design position. And I think he'll find himself to be a lot more consistent with that type of shot. Chipping. Its technique is a game in itself. First of all, let's try to figure out what we're trying to accomplish with a chip shot. Obviously, it's getting the ball close to the hole. But what club can you get the ball closest to the hole with, generally on the green? Well, obviously, the putter. So let's try to simulate a putt as much as possible. So the first thing we have to do is get the ball on the green. Well, I try to get the ball on the green with a chip shot as soon as possible, say in the first 3 or 4 feet. Well, let's just take this shot, for instance, here. I've got a 40-foot shot, maybe 6 foot off the green, and I try to carry it 3 or 4 feet on the green. That's maybe carrying it 10 feet and let the ball roll 30 feet. Well, for this shot, I've selected an 8-iron. If I had a longer shot, maybe 60 feet, I might select a 6-iron. If I had a shorter shot, maybe 20 feet, I might try to carry it 10 feet and roll it 10 feet with maybe a pitching wedge or a sand wedge. Of course, a lot of it depends on the cut and the speed of the green, too. But that's how I select a club to try to simulate a putt and get the ball rolling as quickly as possible. Now let's go to technique. The technique of hitting a chip shot is, first of all, in the grip. I want to try to make my hands be as much opposite each other as I possibly can and opposing each other. I use a reverse overlapping or a putting grip. Put my hands opposing them, turn my elbows out. This allows me to be in a position of not being able to use my wrist. Unlike pitching, where you use a lot of hands, In chipping, you want to take your hands out. I then make sure that the ball is placed in the back of my stance, somewhere near the right foot. And the worse lie I have, the more I play the ball back. And also, I want to make sure that the club angle, or the shaft angle, is ahead of the ball. And of course, the worse the lie, the more the shaft will be moving ahead of the ball. I take a relatively wide stance. I've got the ball placed in the back of the stance. My hands opposing each other. And from this point here, I've got everything locked. I just hit it with my shoulders. When I do this, I find I have a great deal of control over any chip shot. The most common problem of the average golfer is consistency of distance, not accuracy. He tries to help the ball too much and uses his hands too much. So I think if you use this method of taking your hands out of it, your shaft ahead, and hitting it with your shoulders, I think your chipping will improve greatly. Putting is no different than any other golf shot. Without a good setup, you haven't got a chance. There are three basic fundamentals in the setup for putting. First of all is the grip. With the grip, it'll be no different than any other golf shot. I want my hands opposing each other and opposite. I want the right hand, all four fingers on the putting shaft, and my left hand has the index finger of my left hand overlapping the last finger of my right hand, and it's called a reverse overlap grip. This is used by 95% of the pros on the tour. And my thumbs are basically down the shaft. Now, that must be comfortable too, so a little adjustment for comfort is fine. Secondly, your eyes should be over the ball. Now, the most important part of over the ball is what I call down the line over the ball. It may be a little behind the ball, which is the way I putt, so I can see the line, or, which is probably preferable, but in a way I wish I probably could have putted, is my eyes directly over the ball. That way I have converging lines and cross on the ball, and that will allow me to hit the ball right at the base of the stroke. With my method, I am slightly behind the ball so that I'm looking down it, and the base of my stroke is a little bit before the ball, which means that I have to make an extra effort to carry my putter through the ball. The other important factor and fundamental is that your arms and your shoulders should always be on the line of the target, whether you use an open stance or the square stance with your eyes over the ball. Now, the reason I use that is because I must be comfortable, and putting is no different than any other shot. You have to be comfortable to be able to hit the shot properly. So here we are. Reverse overlapping grip, eyes over the line of the target, arms and shoulders down the line, and then it's just a matter of swinging the putter and hitting the putt. I hope it helps. When you go to the golf course, you see all kinds of golf swings. When you go to the putting green, you might see anything. You see guys bent way over here, hands apart. You see guys putting on the side. You see guys standing straight up. And you see very few of them paying much attention to the fundamentals that should make you a good putter. Let's review. First of all, I want my hands opposing each other so that I can be as square to the line of the putt as possible. Secondly, I want to make sure that my eyes are down the line of the putt. Whether they be over the ball or slightly behind it, it's a matter of preference. And third, I want to make sure that my shoulders and my arms are square to the line of the putt. If you follow these basic fundamentals, I think you've got a chance of being a pretty good putter. A good stroke is one that is repeated time after time after time. When we're putting, consistency becomes the name of the game. Being able to strike the ball solidly time after time. And I think there are two elements that I think are very important in my stroke that could help you develop your stroke and be a better putter. First of all, is I try to make sure that I putt with my arms and shoulders. I generate my power from my arms and shoulders, and I use my hands for direction only. Once I set my hands, I then allow the arms and shoulders to dictate how hard I'm going to hit the ball. Secondly, is that the pace of the stroke or the tempo of the stroke is developed by the swing of the putter, the weight of the putter swinging back and forth. In other words, if I have a short putt, I take a very short swing and I let the putter swing back for short. If I have a longer putt, it swings longer. But the weight of the putter dictates the pace of the stroke. I put those together and I should be more consistent. It should look something like this. Here I am over the ball and I'm thinking, okay, I've got about a 12-foot putt. I want to make sure that I swing with my arms and shoulders, and I want to swing the club back a reasonable distance so that I can swing it through with the weight of the putter and cause the ball to roll over slowly and evenly and stay on the ground and give myself a much better chance to be consistent to make all the putts that I need to make when it's important. I think the average golfer doesn't separate his hands and arms enough when he's putting. And what I mean by that is he tries to use both his hands and his arms for direction and for power. And what results is that they start acting independently, and it sort of pulls the putter off the line and distorts the stroke. Now, this is what he might look like. And I'm sure you've seen that kind of a stroke, and I think you've heard about the yips. Well, those are the kind of things that happen when you're trying to do too much and try not to keep it simple. Now, the other kind of fault that you might see with the average golfer is that he quits at the ball. You see a lot of fellas that say, well, I'm going to take a big, long stroke, and then they stop at the ball. Well, obviously, you must be aggressive, and you can't stop the putter. So what I really feel you want to do is you want to let the weight of the putter take the putter back and have it back far enough so that when it arrives at the ball, it is arriving with its maximum force, and you'll be aggressive going through the ball. Secondly, you want to make sure that the putter is swung from the shoulders and arms and not with the hands, and use the hands for direction only. That will keep the putter blade on line stroke after stroke. And after all, consistency is the name of the game. Here we are, right down the line. Give it a try.